Hello, it's me, Anna. I run the Dungeon of Bad Decisions Tumblr blog, which you no doubt already know. Here is our first official YouTube video about tabletop things. Finally. Okay, so initially I was going to start these videos off with a segment on character creation, but then you people kept bombarding me with requests for GMing tips, so that's what we're going to do. Now, I've got to make a disclaimer here, in addition to the one about excessive swearing. I have run precisely one game in the entirety of my life. It was a one-off, and while it went well, I wouldn't necessarily call it the best thing ever. However, I do have a lot of friends who are experienced GMs, and I've had more than one discussion with them on how to run a game, what they think is the most important thing, etc. So, without further ado, let us commence with Anna's top tips for running a tabletop game. Number 1. As the Boy Scout motto, be prepared. What does that entail exactly? Well, you have to know what you're playing, for starters. If you're doing a pre-gen campaign, familiarize yourself with the content. Always read a few sessions ahead. You need to know what's coming. If you're running this online, say on Roll20.com, which we use, make sure you have all of the necessary maps and tokens before the session starts. I made that mistake. If you're running this in person and you have the kind of party that doesn't do well with just imagining the battle in their heads, and you can get a hold of some kind of map or whatever, then make sure you have that. For instance, if you have one of those wet erase maps, then make sure you can draw it each map when it is called for. If you don't have or can't afford one of those kinds of things, then an empty pizza box will do, for example, which I've actually done. Use whatever you've got lying around for tokens. Dice are usually good. Just make sure everybody knows who's who, and don't mix up your dice, because some people don't react well to that. Make sure you know where everything is. Make sure you have your NPCs statted and named and whatnot. If you're writing your own campaign, then make sure everything makes sense. Make sure you've calculated XP for each encounter, and that each encounter isn't too much or too little for your party. Make sure you haven't forgotten to ensure that you have the right NPCs and monsters, and make sure you have easy access to their stats and sheets during the session. Also, make sure your players are prepared as well. It is common courtesy for each player to roll their characters' base stats in the GM's presence, so make sure you have time for that. Before you begin the campaign, go over their sheets and make sure they didn't screw anything up. If you're a new GM and you have a more experienced player or friend who is more likely to catch any mistakes made, have them help you out. Number 2, party count. Make sure you don't have too many people playing. Even if you've got a whole bunch of friends who really want to be in your campaign, you need to ensure that you've got an absolute cap on the number of people who can play. I've seen a lot of GMs make the mistake of going, oh, well, they're only going to be playing part-time, so it's okay if I have 7 or 8 people in my party, since only 5 of them are going to be here every week, or however often you play. That always ends badly, because once your campaign has gone on for a month or 2, people's schedules start to change. Those part-time players start making room for playing in your campaign on a regular basis, and suddenly you're dealing with a 10-person party every single week, and it's all gotten out of hand, and everything takes forever. Trust me, it's not fun. A good party caps out at 6 people, at the absolute most. 4 or 5 is actually better, in my opinion, especially if you're new at this. Number 3, railroading. In a word, don't. Give your players the freedom to make their own choices, no matter how far they deviate from the way you planned things or how badly they break your plot. Just remember that you can't always predict where they're going to go with something, and that brings me to my next tip. Number 4, always be ready to improvise. If you're not good at that, get good at it. Your players are people, and as you get to know them, you'll get better at predicting how they and their characters will deal with the situation. But at the beginning, for the first several sessions, they're going to surprise you, they're going to frustrate you, and they're going to throw all of your careful planning out the window and laugh maniacally as it falls screaming to its death. So how do you deal with that? You improvise. You figure out a way to get them back into the plot from where they ran from the path and into the woods, deep into the woods sometimes, and gently steer them back to where you want them. It can be hard to do that at first, but with practice you'll get pretty good at predicting how your party will react to things and improvising when you get it wrong. Number 5, be firm. You are the GM. Your word is law. If a player starts an argument about a rule or mechanic in the middle of a fight when it could easily be taken care of later, don't be afraid to shut them down. Be gentle about it, but still don't let them go on about it. If you have a player who likes to start drama and other kinds of shit, don't be afraid to boot them. Talk to them first, of course, after the session. A lot of times these people don't realize what they're doing and just need to be talked to about it. Don't be all confrontational about it, though. Start with something like, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there have been times when you've done this thing that bothers me and the other players and disrupts the flow of the game. If you could please try to be conscious of when you start to do that and try to improve, that'd be great, thanks. If they refuse to improve or blame you or the others for their misbehavior, don't be afraid to say, well, if that's how you feel, then you can leave. There's no room on my campaign for people like you. If they promise to get better but show absolutely no signs of actually trying, talk to them again. If they try bullshitting you, kick them. Many a campaign has fallen apart because the GM wasn't willing to be firm about a drama starting player. Number 6, make sure everybody is having fun. Even as they acknowledge you as the ultimate authority, players still want to feel a sense of control over their characters and actions, which would obviously be negated if you don't follow rule number 3, no railroading. Also, if you're writing your own campaign, it's really not a good idea to center most of the plot around a single player. Nobody likes feeling disposable, and that's how everybody will look at it if the plot lives and dies by one character and everybody else is just along for the ride. Also, even if you love to write and create stories and worlds, don't focus everything on your NPCs. I had a DM once who, while a great person and an intensely creative campaign writer, sort of made it feel like the party was just the supporting cast to an NPC they had poured all their passion into. It's basically the same as writing the plot for a single player, except this player is you and the character is your creation. If you're playing in a physical setting, a friend of mine once told me to watch the dice towers. The bigger and more elaborate they are, the less interested the player. Try to engage them and distract them from their dice towers. If you're in the middle of a fight, have them be attacked. If you're not, approach them with an NPC demanding attention for some reason or another. Improvise a situation that requires their character's special skills. Force them to use their dice for the game instead of construction. Also, not everybody is comfortable with sex jokes or even more than mild swearing, especially if your party is comprised of people you don't know that well. Try to keep it family friendly until you're sure that everyone, and I mean everyone, is comfortable with you letting loose on the crude humor, and F-bombs. Number 7. Last but not least, the most important rule of them all. Don't be a dick. We've all heard stories about GMs who start off seeing like decent people, but then turn out to be power-mad motherfuckers. Specifically, some friends of mine in the home group had a DM who would help them make these really awesome characters, and then specifically design the campaign to make that character utterly useless, or even to break that character. One friend of mine had a monk, still low level, who had taken a vow of poverty, which in 3.5 means that they can't take possession of anything. They cannot carry anything, they can't own things. This DM put a cursed gemstone in front of this guy's character and forced him to roll a will save not to pick it up. The DC was 37. Obviously, he failed and picked it up. The DM then ruled that by picking it up, he was taking possession of it, and therefore had broken his vow of poverty, thereby completely wrecking the character. So, yeah, don't be that guy. Don't use your power as a GM to get petty revenge on your players for insignificant slights, real or imagined. If you don't get along with a person, then don't fucking put them in your party. You don't have to play with anybody you don't want to play with. And likewise, they don't have to play with you if they don't like you. So if you think that just because you're the only GM running a campaign in the area that your party will tolerate any and all kind of bullshit, please remember that you're dead fucking wrong. These days, it's very easy to find a campaign to play over the internet, and if you make things miserable enough, you might just put your players off tabletops for years, maybe for the rest of their lives. They don't have to put up with you, and eventually, if you keep it up, they won't. So yeah, that's pretty much the best I could come up with. If you somehow got here from not Tumblr, check out the blog at thedungeonofbaddecisions.tumblr.com. We also have a Twitter account at officialbadidea, a Steam group chat that nobody ever frequents anymore, also the Dungeon of Bad Decisions, and a Twitch channel, also called the Dungeon of Bad Decisions. You sensing a theme here? Because I am. Where we live stream the online sessions on Saturday and Sunday nights with the online group. I'd like to be more specific as to when, but really the best I can do is to say that Saturdays are currently not actually happening due to schedule conflicts. Sorry. And Sundays usually start between 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Akari, co-mod of the Tumblr blog, puts up 1 hour and 5-minute warnings on the blog before we stream. Watch us be idiots and assholes in real time. It's a lot of fun, seriously guys. If you have questions or comments, you know where they go. If you'd like me to expand on one of the tips presented in the video, then go ahead and tell me about that too. And also, obviously, please subscribe. Alright, that's it. See you next time, whenever that might be. Sorry in advance, because I'm not a timely person at all.